This is section 6.1, sales tax. In the first question, we have how does sales tax affect the price you pay for a computer game? So it simply increases the original price. It's to your original price. When you go buy video game, for example, you have to add the percent of sales tax, which will always increase the original price. In this section, we'll be working with the sales tax formula, which is sales tax equals total selling price times sales tax rate. However, also before I continue this section, we need to learn how to write percents as decimals. So I'm going to explain step by step. We are going to use the example here given. They use 10.5% as a percent. However, you can use it when it's 10%, 20%, 15, 50. It doesn't matter the amount as long as it's written in percent. So on step number 1, you need to drop the percent sign. If we have 10.5%, my first step is taking the percent sign out. So I now only have 10.5. The same will happen if I had 20%. My first step is still taking that percent sign. Now step 2 is to move 2 places to the left. So we are supposed to move the point, right, 2 places to the left. So in this case, after dropping the percent sign, we got 10.5. How are we going to move the 2 places to the left? My point, this one I will move it 1, 2. So then my point, instead of being after the 0, is before the 1. So how would this look like? I add a 0 before the point, and then I write 10 and 5. Okay? So this is my answer now. From having 10.5%, now I have 0.105 as decimals. We can make another example. We can have 25%. So our first step is always taking that percent sign. So now we have 25. Right? So in my second example, I have 25, which is also the same as having 25.00 since it's a whole number. Okay? So when I go ahead and move my point 2 times to the left, I have 1 and 2. So my point just move to before the 2. So my answer is now, again, we put a 0 before the point, and then we write 2 and 5. We don't need to write the 2 zeros we wrote before to explain the decimals for a whole number. This will be my answer. Let's continue with our concept check. This is number 2. We write 15.7% as a decimal. So our first step is to drop the percent sign, and then we move 2 places to the left. Therefore, 15.7 is equal to what? So let's do it again here. We have 15.7%. Step 1 is to drop the sign. We only have 15.7. Now in our second step, we need to move our point 2 times to the left. So what is my answer? Again, 0 comes before the point, and we just write again 1, 5, and 7. So this is my answer for this. 0.157. We can now work on number 3. We have 40%. So in our first step, we drop the sign, so we only have 40. In our second step, we should be moving our point. Since it's a whole number, I can write 2 zeros after just to make it clear and less confusing for us. So we need to move the point 1, 2 places to the left. Now my point is before the 4. I add 0.40. Again, we don't have to write the 2 zeros that we did add before, just because we only use it so it could be better explained. Also, work on number 4. Okay, this is 85%. Step number 1, we drop the sign. Step number 2, we add the point after. This is a whole number again. We add the 2 zeros just to make it clear. We move 1, 2, so our point now it's before the 8. So we have 0.85. And that's, we are going to work on number 5. The rest of problems, you could do it by yourself. It's 120%. Right? First step, we drop the sign. Second step, we write the point just for better explanation. We move the point 2 times to the left. Now what's different here is that we are not going to add any zeros because we still have 1 on the left side. So when we move the point 2 times, we only move it from after 0 to before 0 and before 2. So 1.20. So 120% can also be written as a decimal as 1.20. Now please continue with problems 6 to 10, following the same steps. Remember, step 1, we drop the sign, and step 2, we move 2 places to the left. Any number before 100 would need to have a 0 before the point. Okay, just remember that. any number after 100 would obviously will have another number before the point. Okay, so now that we know how to convert a percent to a decimal, we go a little bit farther and we now will be working in finding percents of an amount. Okay, so remember how we did a percent to a decimal? That's always going to be our first step in this case. Okay, so step number 1, it's convert 15% to a decimal. This is just an example, so we can always work with any other number that it's not 15. Okay, so this is just an example. Again, remember how we had 15%. My first step was to drop the percent sign, and then 15, I can also write it like this. So the point will move twice to the left, and my point will be now before the 1. Since it's a number before 100, I still need to add 0, then add my point, and I just write 15. Okay, so now we have a percent written in decimal. Now for my step 2, it says multiply by the decimal. So what means here? My question was to find 15% of 60. Now I found that 15% is 0.15 in decimals. Now I take what I just found. 0.15, and I will multiply this amount by the amount that I want to. So in this case, we need to find 15% of 60, right? So I have 0.15 times 60. Okay, go to my calculator and I write 0.15 times 60 is 9. That is the answer that we have right here. Okay, therefore 15% of 60 is 9. Right, this is very useful when we want to know if we go to buy, for example, a t-shirt, and the t-shirt costs $20, but it has the 15% off, right? So how much would I know, or how would I know how much less that shirt is going to be? Okay, so this is very useful for anything that when we go to buy to the mall, to the store, to any of those cases. So again, remember step number 1, we convert 15 to a decimal, or the percent as a decimal, and in step 2, we multiply by the decimal, the amount that we had. Okay, now we go to our concept check. For number 2, it says find 30% of 72. So what is my step number 1? We convert our 30% to decimals. And then in step 2, we have, or whatever we get in this answer, we are going to multiply by 72. So let's go ahead and do it. I have 30%. Step number 1, we drop the sign, we get 30. We write down 30.00 since it's a whole number, and we move the 0.2 times to the left. 30 is still a number before 100 or less than 100. So I still need to add the 0. 0 point and just write again 30. So I just convert my percent into decimal. Now they're asking me for 30% of 72. So I take whatever we just found, which is 0.30, and I multiply it by 72, which is the amount, the amount that they gave us. We go to our calculator and we write 0.30 times 72 or multiply by 72, and we have now 21.6. Now my answer is 21.6. So if I want to write it down right here, we found that 30% was 0.30 in decimals. I multiply this by 72, and my answer is 21.6. Okay, so now let's do another problem. Let's do number 3, just to show you the steps again. So it says 4% of 96. So first step, our 4%, we're gonna write it, drop in the sign, so we only have 4. And now we rewrite 4.00 just to make it clear that it's a whole number. We need to move the point 2 times to the left. So our point here moves before the 4. Now since it's a very small number, it's only one digit, we always add, and it's less than 100, right? We add 0 point, and we need to write another 0, which should be the one that's right here. And then we write 4. Again, that happens when numbers are less than 10 and they're only one digit. Since I moved 2 places to the left, I need to compensate that with another 0. So after that, I now have 0.04 in decimals, right? I need to know 4% of 96. So I take the decimal number, then I multiply by 96. So I go now to my calculator and I put 0.04, which is the decimal, times 96. That is 3.84. So my answer here is 3.84. So now I know that 4% of 96, it's only 3.84. Now let's do number 4. Right, number 4, it says 9% of 122. First step again, we write it with a percent, but then we are dropping the sign. So I only have 9. And I write down 9.00 since it's a whole number. I move my point 2 places to the left. 9 is less than 10 and it's one digit, so I will need to compensate that with 2 zeros, right? So my answer is 0.09. Now that I have that, I multiply 0.09 times 122. I go to my calculator. It has 0.09 multiplied by 122. That is 10.98. So my answer here is 9% of 122 is 10.98. We are going to use the next problem. In this case, we're going to use number 7 just because I want to show you how to do with a percent that has more than than one digit. Okay, so it's 17.8%. My first step is I drop the sign, so I only have 17.8. I rewrite that, and now I have to move the point twice to the left. So it's still less than 100, so I'm adding the 0, but then I have 178. That's my decimals. And now I will multiply 0.178 times 80 equals, I'll go to my calculator and I will write 0.178 times 80. That is 14.24. 14.24. So my answer here is 14.24. Please continue with the other problems, number 5, 6, 8, 9, and 10. Again, using the same steps. Step number 1, we convert the number to decimal, and then step number 2, we multiply our decimals by the amount given, and that's how we find our answer. Now we move to our concept check. Back to section 6.1. Remember the formula we presented at the beginning of this section. Sales tax equals total selling price times or multiplied by sales tax rate. So it says, the problem says, the total selling price is $2,520. Our Florida sales tax rate is 6%. And Gainesville sales tax rate is 1%. So on number 1, we say step number 1, we find the total selling price, which is $2,520 according to the problem. So in step 2, we need to find the total sales tax rate based on what is mentioned already. So remember, our formula is total state's tax rate equals city tax rate plus state tax rate. So what's our first rate? The city tax rate. That is 1% plus the state tax rate. That's Florida sales tax rate. That will be 6%. That equals to 7%, right? We're just adding the tax rates. So first, city tax rate, and then the state tax rate. That's 7%. So in step number 3, we find the sales tax. Very important, remember now we have a 7%, but according to what we just learned, we need to write percent as decimals. So the first thing we do is to drop the sign. We rewrite the amount 7.00 since it's a whole number. Then I move twice to the left the point. It is a number less than 10 and less than 100. Okay, so 0.07. This is my answer. Let's see, that is less than 10, so it's one digit number. So instead of adding just the 0 before the point, I also add a 0 after the point. So 0.07. Now I know that the total selling price is $2,520. Now I will have to multiply by my decimal amount that we just found. I go to my calculator and it's $2,520 multiply by 0.07. That gives me a total of 176.4. So my answer here is 176.4. And this is my answer. Now continue with the homework for section 6.1 in your textbook. Complete problems 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, 10, and 12.